Coming up on Bridge City News. Today, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney announced a three-stage plan to begin reopening the provincial economy by the middle of May. The body of one of the crew members of a downed Canadian Forces helicopter off the coast of Greece has been recovered, but 5 others are still missing. And many farmers have been relying on migrant workers for their labor needs. We check in with a local producer to learn how the pandemic is affecting this.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Paul Arthur.
Thanks for joining us. Albertans have long been waiting for some good news when it comes to COVID-19 restrictions. Well, this afternoon, Premier Jason Kenney announced a three-stage plan to begin reopening the provincial economy by the middle of May.
Once our government, in consultation with the Chief Medical Officer, is satisfied that the necessary health measures are in place, we will move forward to the first stage of our relaunch strategy. We anticipate that some businesses and facilities will be able to open as early as May 14th. That will be stage 1, and this is what it will look like. Retail businesses like clothing, furniture, and bookstores will be able to reopen, operating within new public health guidelines, addressing things like the number of customers and disinfecting protocols. Some personal services like hairstyling and barbershops will be able to reopen under strict health guidelines. More dental procedures, physiotherapy, chiropractic, optometry, and similar services will also be able to open under these strict healthcare guidelines. New public health rules tailored to specific types of business will also mean that we can reopen museums and art galleries, daycares with limits, restaurants, cafes, lounges, and bars if they can maintain social distancing, such as public seating at 50% capacity, and some additional outdoor recreation.
If stage 1 is successful, the province will reopen schools in stage 2, more personal services, movie theaters, and will even allow some larger gatherings. Non-essential travel will also still not be recommended through the first 2 stages of the strategy. Finally, the third stage would see everything reopen and almost all restrictions on gatherings and travel removed. Chief of Defence Staff General Jonathan Vance is confirming the identity of one of the 6 crew members in a Canadian Forces helicopter which crashed near Greece yesterday. The body of Sub-Lieutenant Abigail Cowbro of Nova Scotia has been recovered from the Ionian Sea. 5 other crew members who were aboard the Cyclone helicopter are still missing.
To the family and friends and shipmates of Sub-Lieutenant Cowbro, our thoughts and prayers with you during this difficult time. To those of you in agony, awaiting the word on the fate of their missing loved ones, we stand with you and are searching as hard as we can. There are no words to describe the pain that you feel right now, nor are there any words that can ease it. Please know that the entire Canadian Armed Forces, and clearly the country, is with you. 16:35, 4:35 p.m. Eastern European Time, the Helicopter Air Detachment, call sign Stalker, took off from HMCS Fredericton during a NATO exercise off the coast of Greece. HMCS Fredericton was working alongside an Italian and Turkish ship understanding NATO Maritime Group 2 and was conducting basic intership training serials. The Cyclone helicopter had conducted flight operations and was returning to the ship. At approximately 6:52 p.m., the ship lost contact with the air crew, and a few minutes later, flares were spotted in the water. Search and rescue efforts were immediately launched with every available resource from Fredericton and members of SNMG-2.
Vance says the helicopter's flight recorders have now been recovered. Canada's Parliamentary Budget Officer estimates the federal deficit will hit a record $252.1 billion this year as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. That's based on the almost $146 billion in aid packages the government has announced, estimated declines in gross domestic product, and the price of oil remaining well below expectations. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did not give any specifics as to how the government will handle the massive deficit.
Right now, we are focused on supporting families through this crisis. We need Canadians to stay home. We need Canadians to take the measures that will protect themselves, their loved ones, their neighbors, and our healthcare systems. And that's why we have made sure that we're sending help to the millions of Canadians across the country who need that help, whether it's through the Canada Emergency Response Benefit or the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy or other measures. We will continue to support Canadians to get through this in the best possible way so that our economy can come roaring back afterwards. There will be a time after this is all done, as we figure out how exactly this unfolds, where we will have to make next decisions on how that recovery looks. But right now, our focus is on getting through this together as a country.
The ice jam on the Athabasca River that has caused major flooding in Fort McMurray has forced 13,000 people from their homes, and there have also been rumors circulating that the flooding is affecting oil sand tailing ponds. Alberta Minister of Environment and Parks Jason Nixon responded to that this morning.
No tailing ponds have been breached, and there is no imminent risk of flood water breaching any of the tailing ponds in the oil sands region. Currently, floodwaters remain below the dams for all tailing ponds, and monitoring has been increased to twice daily to ensure stability and risk associated with all tailing ponds. The AER, the Alberta Energy Regulator, is holding daily calls with operators to discuss the flood situation and has regulatory agents on site conducting field verifications and closely monitoring the company's actions to ensure the situation remains stable. Suncor has current and up-to-date strategies in place, and the companies have equipment available to respond if required. Further response strategies do exist in the event circumstances were to change significantly from the current state. But I want to reiterate, things would have to change significantly, and the situation around tailing ponds is stable. This is good news. There's also further good news when it comes to the flooding in the north. The situation appears to be improving. Alberta Environment River Forecast Center's report that water levels within the jam are dropping. In fact, the water level gauge located within the jam by Highway 63 bridge has shown a drop in the Athabasca River by ½ a meter since last night. They have also observed that 4 kilometers of the ice jam melted away overnight. We know that the ice jam is showing some movement this morning, so things are looking up.
Nixon says municipal authorities are now in the planning stages to allow evacuated residents to return to Fort McMurray. Farmers in Alberta could be fined up to $1 million, that is, if they allow migrant workers to begin working without first self-isolating for 2 weeks. BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly visited Broxburn Vegetables in Lethbridge, where one farmer is now behind in planting because of this delay.
Thanks, Paul. Broxburn Fruits and Vegetables owner Paul De Jong and his family say that they've been housing 8 Mexican migrant workers. Originally, they thought that the workers would be able to work while socially distancing. They found out from the federal government that that is not the case.
They cannot do a thing at all. So even if they were separated, it's still not good enough. So the fines would be very significant, so it's definitely not an option that they work, so we'll have to just make it through the 2 weeks. We hired a number of local girls, and we have a number of girls that worked in a cafe that were actually laid off, but they can work here now, so just for temporary. It's not the kind of work that they're normally wanting to do, but you know, in these circumstances, they're happy to be working.
The federal government is now providing $1,500 for each worker to help offset the cost. Canadian dairy producers are set to lose $100 million if the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement takes effect in July, opposed to its original August 1st date. Alberta Milk Board member and Barnwell dairy farmer Stuart Bovey says that there are a lot of misconceptions between Canadian and U.S. dairy markets.
Because U.S. dairy and Canadian dairy is a lot different, people don't understand that you can't just trade back and forth. Their federal government supports them differently than our federal government does, and that's a big issue for us. And it's really, really complicated, so the average consumer really doesn't understand the differences on that. And that's why we tend to manage our price by producing the right amount of milk. In the U.S., there are government programs that buy up the extra milk. So that's one of the major differences. And that's really concerning to us because the U.S. government is sitting on milk stocks, usually in the form of cheese or powder. So that's our concern.
Canada is already giving up 3.6% of its domestic markets to imports under the existing deal. The sister city of Lethbridge, Anyang City, China, has donated surgical masks to our city to help frontline workers. These masks will be distributed to Lethbridge EMS, fire services, and police officers. Mayor Chris Spearman says this gesture of help from Anyang City is a much appreciated step in their relationship.
Earlier this year, the Chinese community in Lethbridge collected masks and sent them to China. And now we have a reciprocal gift back from China now that we need masks in our community. There has been a shortage of masks throughout Alberta, and we've been asking for masks, and so these 12,000 masks will be very much appreciated by our first responders. Building up a personal relationship with elected officials there and encouraging relationships between our citizens and citizens in Anyang is very important.
The surgical masks are expected to arrive to frontline workers within the next few weeks. And some more good news for Lethbridge frontline workers. Local philanthropist Cor Van Ray has donated 28 stethoscopes to the CHR Emergency Department, which will provide each ER room with its own dedicated stethoscope to help reduce the chances of infection. Many Canadians have lost their jobs due to COVID-19 and are either staying at home or have decided to work part-time jobs. We caught up with a Lethbridge man who thought he would give it a try with Skip the Dishes. Micah Quinn has the story.
If you had asked Evan Kovacs over a month ago if he would have been working at Skip the Dishes, he would have said no. But because of COVID-19, this is a reality for him now.
I started driving just because I had lost my job recently because of the coronavirus outbreak and loss of jobs everywhere, really. And I started doing it just because I thought it'd be a good way to make some extra money while I'm laid off, and also, give back to the community who are all isolated and at home.
You can support local restaurants by ordering through Skip the Dishes, and they'll deliver right to your door through contactless delivery.
Skip the Dishes has done contactless delivery and cashless delivery transactions. So what we've been doing is we just leave it on the doorstep and either ring the doorbell or listen to whatever instructions that the customer has, and we'll leave it on the doorstep and just sign off that we've delivered the order.
Kovacs says the job has its perks and that it's been a positive experience overall.
The people have been very friendly that I've interacted with from a distance, of course, and people are tipping nice, which is great.
Skip the Dishes can also be a good source of income if you put time into it.
So I would recommend a delivery job like this as a good side gig for someone who's looking to make some extra money, or if they're looking for something to do while they're laid off.
Evan Kovacs says he's thankful for people that order through Skip the Dishes to help people like him be able to make some money during this downtime of COVID-19. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
We've all heard of a wishing well, but what about a wishing tree? Tomorrow is Wish Day, and Lethbridge School District 51 is hoping all their students, along with everyone else in the city, makes a special wish on their favorite tree. BCN's Jeanette Roche explains that it's an initiative that began last year with one simple book that had a very impactful message.
They say when you really want something, you should wish upon a star. But have you ever tried wishing on a tree? That's exactly what Isaac Orr and his two sisters are doing. These siblings are sending out a wish for themselves, a wish for someone else, and a wish for the world. And they're tying it to a tree in their backyard. And it all started with this story called Wish Tree. It's a very book read by every single student at the same time from K to 12 last year during a campaign called One District, One Book.
So what was so special and unique about One District, One Book is that it was the first time that it was done in Canada, but actually the first time that it's ever been done involving students all the way from kindergarten to grade 12. And it actually culminated last year, May 1st, Wishing Day, with a visit from the one and only Catherine Applegate, the author of this book.
And now, 1 year later, Lethbridge School District 51 is celebrating the anniversary of the special project that proclaims May 1st as Wishing Day.
We'll be asked to come on out to a tree in their yard, in their neighborhood, and whisper a wish or put something on a tree and send out their wishes. I think now more than ever we need wishes, and we need wishes for the world. I can't think of a better time to put some positive wishes out there than during a world pandemic.
For Bridge City News, I'm Jeanette Roche.
Lethbridge Animal Services has teamed up with the Alberta SPCA to support pet owners in the city through their Community Pet Food Bank.
There is some restrictions as we are a City of Lethbridge facility. We can only assist residents of the City of Lethbridge. Outside of that, there's no sort of discrimination on your financial situation at that point. But we do want people to recognize that it is a program run completely on donations from the public, and it's not intended to feed your pet full time. It's there to assist you in a sort of a short-term basis while you're trying to get your feet back on the ground.
Those needing access to the Pet Food Bank are encouraged to call 403-320-4099. A local business is supporting other local businesses in a creative way. C&M Roofing has purchased gift cards and other items from Lethbridge shops for a giveaway in order to celebrate their 2-year anniversary. BCN's Loris Alexander explains winning is just one click away.
Just with all this COVID-19 happening, all the businesses shut down and all this happening, we just figured we could maybe do something to support local businesses.
That something was a plan to purchase gift cards and items for a giant giveaway. The plan evoked emotion from local vendors.
I went into Strength Camp and to purchase the gift certificate, and they had it all filled out as though they were donating it. And once I said, no, I want to pay for it because we want to support you guys, it was just amazing, like tears even were shed.
And not to mention generosity.
Cuppers, for example, we said we wanted a $100 basket made, and they made it $150. They just added an extra item in there because they were backing what we were doing and thought it was a great idea. With the Umami shop, they made a basket that has all the ingredients you need for a dinner, and then they also put in a $50 gift certificate. And with that $50 gift certificate, you can sign up for one of their online cooking classes.
So how do you give yourself a chance at winning?
You can go onto our Facebook page. If you like us on Facebook, follow us, and tag 3 friends. That's kind of how we're doing it. We also ask that you please go to the other local businesses that we have included in our giveaway and just give them a like and a follow too. Just even if that's your only way to support them at this time, those likes and shares, they do help support us as well in business.
The lucky winner will be announced on May 8th at 11 a.m. For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
More than 100 people attended an End the Lockdown protest yesterday at the Alberta Legislature. Michael Banner, who is a risk analysis consultant, is one of the organizers of the rally, and his own projections show a lower curve than those released by Alberta Health. The group is calling on the province to increase the limit on the number who can gather due to COVID-19 and to reopen playgrounds and provincial parks. It also wants restaurants to be allowed to be open at half capacity. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe says he is confident about his government's plan to ease some restrictions around COVID-19, despite 2 outbreaks of the illness and another death. Health officials reported the province's 6th death yesterday. A person in their 80s at a long-term care facility in La Loche. Lloydminster is dealing with an outbreak of 13 cases tied to its hospital, where there has been transmission in both patients and staff. The first stage of the province's plan to relax restrictions is to take effect Monday, when medical services like dental offices can begin seeing more patients. Former Winnipeg Mayor Glenn Murray is jumping into politics again, this time seeking the leadership of the Federal Green Party. Murray, who is also a former Ontario Liberal cabinet minister, says his political experience makes him a natural fit. He notes he was part of a provincial government that shut down coal plants and introduced a cap-and-trade system for greenhouse gas emissions. Murray was also executive director of the Pembina Institute, a nonprofit clean energy think tank. The Greens are to choose a successor to Elizabeth May on October 4th in Charlottetown. With a cancellation of the Kentucky Derby this Saturday, racing fans will have to settle for an alternative that may be the slowest 8 minutes in sports. As was the case when the Run for the Roses was canceled in 1945 due to the Second World War, this weekend there will be a Kentucky Turtle Derby. Triple Crown announcer Larry Kalmus will call the race, and bugler Steve Buttleman will serenade viewers prior to the Turtles taking off at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on youtube.com/Old Forester. The Turtle race will actually be pre-taped in Chicago with the likes of Sir Hides-a-Bunch and Galapagos in the field. We enjoyed more mild temperatures today, and complete weather details are coming right up. It has been so nice to see those plus 20 temperatures. Jeanette Roche is here now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, how's the forecast shaping up for the rest of the week?
Not too badly at all, Paul. You know, they do say April showers bring May flowers, so we are going to be seeing a 30% chance of showers this evening. It should be clearing into tomorrow morning, though, and then we're going to have a lovely sunny day for Friday with a high of 18 degrees and an overnight low of 3 degrees. And then as we get into the 5-day forecast for the weekend, we should have a lovely day on Saturday as well. 20 degrees is the high, 16 the high for Sunday with partly cloudy skies. Now, Monday, we should be seeing a 60% chance of showers earlier in the day, and it's going to clear away with a high of 14 degrees. And into Tuesday, high of 15 and high of 18 for Wednesday with partly cloudy skies. So not too bad, definitely. 16 degrees is the average high for this time of year, so we're certainly in there and above. The average low is 2 degrees. The 27 was the highest temperature on this day back in 1968, and the lowest temperature was a chilly -9. That was in 1954. The sun rose at 6:10 a.m. and the sunset for Thursday 8:47 p.m. So let's take a look at tomorrow's highs across the nation. Looking at Victoria and Vancouver, 30% chance of showers in Victoria expected, 40% in Vancouver tomorrow, highs of 14 for both of those cities. Edmonton and Calgary should see lots of sunshine tomorrow, although they had the chance of rain today, but highs of 16 and 17 in those cities. 18 is the high for Saskatoon with lots of sunshine. Now, Regina is going to be seeing a chance of showers with a high of 19. Winnipeg could be seeing periods of rain, and actually they could be seeing an afternoon, a thunderstorm as well. So they should be aware of that. Toronto will see a 30% chance of showers tomorrow with a high of 16. Same thing for Ottawa. Chance of showers, a high of 14 degrees. And Montreal was under a rainfall warning, but they could still see that rain into tomorrow as well. Rain also expected in Fredericton with a high of 12 degrees. Lots of rain expected throughout Atlantic Canada, high of 14 in Charlottetown. Halifax high 13 degrees and a high of 12 expected in St. John's, Newfoundland with partly cloudy skies there. There you go. That is your forecast.
Economic growth stalled in February, leaving gross domestic product essentially unchanged. Statistics Canada reports declines in educational services due to teachers' strikes in Ontario and disruptions in the transportation and warehousing sector due to rail blockades offset growth in other areas. Excluding these two sectors, the economy would have grown 0.2% in February. The agency's preliminary estimate for March suggests the economy posted a 9% decline as business came to a standstill. Another 3.8 million Americans filed for jobless benefits last week. The U.S. government reports some 30.3 million people have now filed for unemployment benefits in the 6 weeks since the COVID-19 outbreak forced businesses to shut down. Economists are predicting April's unemployment rate could soar to 20%. With bars and restaurants closed due to COVID-19, Molson Coors is predicting a major drop in sales and profits in its second quarter. The company reported a first quarter loss of $117 million U.S. this morning. It estimates 23% of consolidated net sales last year resulted from what it called on-premises consumption, which has effectively been reduced to zero. Twitter is reporting a first quarter loss of $8.4 million as higher expenses outweighed revenue growth. The San Francisco company has recorded the highest user growth rate in its history at 24%. The number of average daily users jumped by 14 million since the previous quarter. And now here's a look at the markets. The TSX was down 447 points to 14,780. The Dow was down 288 points to 24,345. And the S&P 500 down 27 points to 2,912. And the Nasdaq was down 25 points to 8,889. Oil was up $4.03 to $19.09 per barrel. Natural gas was up 7 cents to $1.94. Gold up $1.78 to $1,688.28 an ounce. And silver was down 5 cents to $14.92 per ounce. Wheat came in at $240 per metric ton. Barley is at $233 per ton. Canola at $464 per ton. And corn at $230 per metric ton. Live cattle were up $4.40 to $90.40. Feeder cattle down 38 cents to $119.30. Lean hogs up $2.85 to $59.48. And the Canadian dollar was up slightly on the day at 0.7173 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the body of one of the crew members of a downed Canadian Forces helicopter off the coast of Greece has been recovered, but 5 others are still missing. The coronavirus pandemic is having a serious impact on our homeless population. Jeanette Roche had the opportunity to chat with Ken Kissick from Streets Alive Mission. That interview is coming up shortly.
The coronavirus pandemic has had a major impact on all of us, but one segment of the society has likely been impacted more than most, and that is, of course, the homeless population and the working poor. Our guest today is Ken Kissick, co-founder of Streets Alive Mission here in Lethbridge. Ken, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Ken, I would imagine that this has to be an extra tough time for people on the streets. I'm guessing many have pre-existing medical conditions and limited access to medical care and whatnot.
It's kind of a two-edged sword, because yes, they're a more vulnerable population. But the other side to that is, for them, coronavirus is not something that they're worried about, because Hep C, HIV, liver, kidney, there's a lot of other things that will affect them more greatly than the possibility of coronavirus.
That makes sense.
But it does limit the services now that they can access. So there's a myriad of things that make it difficult for us to manage some of the population, the addicted population, that wants to stop, trying to get them on supports, trying to get them to treatment or detox centers. All of that is really difficult.
I would imagine, and now, of course, we're all doing the social distancing thing, right? How is this population handling that? Are they doing it, or are they not so much?
Well, the street population is a family unto itself. They have one another's backs. And so to try and get them to self-distance is a really keen problem, because while they understand what's trying to go on, they just feel like family. Now, we're not self-distancing as families because we're in a group, right? And so are they. And so we try and get them to, do that stuff when they come into Streets Alive. We've set up so that, while they're waiting, they're 6 feet apart. They have to come in. There's a hand washing station. And they're pretty good at following those instructions. But then they'll go back outside and all stand together, a group on the street. So.
Yeah, exactly. But the education component is there. You're teaching them. And
yeah, and they're for the most part, they're being compliant. If the police or the watch or somebody asks them to they do spread out, and then they'll come back together.
That's how it is, right?
That's how it is.
That's how they live their lives. Yeah. Okay, so now with the pandemic, the thrift stores have shut down, of course, but the need is still there. And I understand that you're still doing what needs to be done, and that you're still accepting donations in a temporary warehouse. Is that right?
What happened was we were invited by the city as part of their COVID response group to lead what they call the clothing, hygiene, and supplies pod. And in conversation with the Salvation Army, MCC, the Mission Thrift Store, and the city itself, we realized people are at home cleaning out their closets, accumulating stuff, and there was a concern if we left this till after COVID, there would be this mass onslaught. So what we did is Bible for Missions Foundation gave us the old Mission Thrift Store building to use for free. And what we've done is we've set up a warehouse in there for people to bring all kinds of items that they would normally take to the thrift stores. Clothing, household goods, furniture. The only thing we're not taking is beds. And what we're doing is we're pulling out of it the stuff that we need and the agencies need, and the agencies like the Rapid Rehousing Group, the COPE team, the different teams that are out there can come in and get supplies from the warehouse, okay? We're still operating our pin bank at the mission, and we feed it out of the warehouse. Then when this is all done, the agencies, My City Care and that group will come back in, take everything that we've really sorted and boxed and everything else, and it'll be done. And they'll be able to kind of take it as they can feed it through their volunteer system.
And where specifically can people take us?
So that is located at 110th Street. It is right across from the Forfeit place, right?
Okay,
The old
yep,
London
yep.
Drugs.
Yep, Fit for
Okay,
Less, yep, right
Fit
there.
for Us,
Yep,
it's right
yep,
there. You
yep.
can't miss it. It's the
Mhm.
west door.
Yep.
We're open from 9:30 till noon and 1 to 4:30, Monday to Friday. So bring your stuff down.
Okay, no, that's great. Are there any specific donations that you're in need of?
Well, we're always in need of jeans, hoodies, underwear, okay, and feminine protection in terms of the hygiene, okay? I mean, we don't want to become a place that collects your garbage, but, you know, all your stuff that you would normally take into the thrift stores, bring it on down. We're collecting it, and it'll get redistributed.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
It's wonderful. And one of the things about it is, initially our you know, we're trying to manage it, but it's really picking up steam. With the success comes a few problems. We've had to reach out to get some garbage containers in collection because some stuff does need to go. Everything is self-distanced. The stuff that comes in today will be held for 2 more days, and then we put it in. So we're following all the practices that we need to follow in terms of the COVID response.
Okay, that's fantastic. That's excellent. Now, this kind of leads into my next question. How has COVID-19 changed the way that your outreach team is doing its work?
Well, now the outreach team, we've had to up the game because we're trying to fill gaps. One of the teams was the diversion outreach team, which had been asked to do medical transport. So they can no longer touch an individual. The individual has to be able to get in and out of their vehicle. So for those that kind of get intoxicated and often need help, there's no transport for them to intox. So our outreach team is filling that gap for them. We've had to expand our hours from 9 to 9, Monday to Friday. We're on call 9 to 9 on Saturdays for that. Plus, we're out there as an extra set of eyes, the encampments and those kinds of places. And the outreach team is another one that the city has asked us to lead. So we're working with Watch, the Lethbridge Police Service, the Arches Cope, the DOT team, Quest, and some of those to help them make sure that the street population is staying healthy, and if we see somebody that isn't, try and get them in and get them tested.
Okay, so what does the outreach team normally do then? Because you mentioned sometimes there's physical contact and they can't do that now. So normally,
our outreach team has always been able to do that.
Okay.
It's the diversion outreach team that couldn't. So we're filling that gap, right?
Okay.
So the other thing that because we've moved to bagged lunches for our evening feeding program, we're also providing, we have a supply of bagged lunches, water, those kinds of things. The team is mobile, going around just checking on people.
So, I mean, obviously that gets back to the basics of what you guys do. You're helping to food, clothe, shelter, and encourage these people on the street and helping them beat addictions as well, because that still needs to be done, right?
That's right.
Okay.
The struggle we're having actually in the addicted population right now is because of the border closure, there's less opioids, which is good on one hand. But the meth use has gone up, and it's actually homemade, self-cooked. So there's bad batches, and so we're really struggling with that population because they're getting quite meth is speed, and so they're very agitated. They're very we're struggling to maintain help for them. Okay, and so that's a bit of a struggle. But the other is, it's become dangerous, and so some of them want to get off the street. And what that's resulted in is because, first of all, detox and treatment were completely shut down, and now they're opened up, but it's a lot of factors in there. Our transitional housing program, we're actually bringing some of them straight in off the street and doing detox and treatment, which we're not totally set up for, but for somebody that wants to get out, we want to get them out.
It sounds like a challenge.
It's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, but there must be some success stories as well, people who are wanting to get off of the addiction or have already. Can you share any success stories?
Yeah, there's lots of success stories. Right now we we have 15 men in our recovery program, okay? We have 11 of those 15 men are part of the warehouse. So they've kind of stopped their programming to help us in the warehouse. And they're loving it. They're stepping up to the plate. We're trying to get them in, but we've had a number of guys hit 60 and 90 days in this. Our women's program, we have 2 girls that we actually took in straight off the street, and they're just coming up on 30 days clean. So wow. It's working. They're motivated, and we are seeing that, and we are working with others to try and get the people into the treatment that when we can. But transportation is an issue. So there's lots of hurdles we're trying to overcome, and it's tough on that population.
Oh, it sounds like it. Are there more people using your food program now, or is it about the same as it was before?
The food program, it is a little different for us right now in that Alpha House out of Calgary was working on the intox, the 30-bed intox facility. But when COVID struck, they actually took over the shelter as well, and they're running 2 different sites. We call them Alpha 1 and Alpha 2. The Alpha 2 is in Fritzik. But we've been providing food for them, bagged lunches for the clientele that's in there, because when they're in the intox facility, if they leave, they have to stay out for an hour, and then they might lose their place. So this is just a way for us to get evening food into them. We're providing probably 80 bag lunches a day to them. And then there's another 40 bag lunches that we have out on the street.
Okay.
So the number of bagged lunches we're feeding is up, okay, or evening meals. But we've had great response in that. The Soup Kitchen's about to start a new evening meal program. And so we'll have to just monitor that because we don't want to duplicate. But it's given us a better opportunity to reach out. We went to bag lunches to help with self-distancing and group gathering.
And you go out and distribute them?
We go out and distribute them, absolutely.
That's amazing. That's a great
way to get
them.
It also allows us to put eyes on them in an environment that's theirs. The street is theirs, right? So they're much more open to talk with us and do those kinds of things.
That's awesome. Now, how are you doing for volunteers? Are your numbers reducing there? Or?
Well, so volunteers is a bit erratic, and as you can understand, some people want to choose to stay and self-isolate. The seniors, which form a large portion of the volunteers for all of these groups, they need to be kept safe. And so there's a change in that. But then we've had others step up. Yesterday we did an orientation for 10 volunteers that want to come and help at the warehouse where we have a need. Some of our volunteers, they're just steady. We have a couple that for the last 9 years drives in from Hayes every Friday, and they just keep coming. Now, Harvey's in the field, so it's just Kathy, but they're committed. We have some seniors who have made sandwiches for like 10 years, and they just come in and do their thing. So it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah. So let's talk about now with the needs actually increasing because of coronavirus, you've actually set up an emergency response fund, right? So how can viewers get involved in supporting your work with this?
So the first thing anybody can do is pray for us. Pray for the people. Pray for the community. Pray that, God's will would be done. It's the one thing you can do. Pray for our protection and protection of the people. That's the one thing you can do. If you have time and want to volunteer, go online, WW Streets Alive, and just fill out an application and come in. And the other is if you go to the same website and you want to just donate, click on donate. You can go in and choose the response fund and the emergency response fund, and you can help us out with some cash donation.
That's awesome. So any final thoughts before we leave each other? Our church is answering the call to help you guys in this time of
we're
crisis.
getting a great response from the community. The churches are facing their own challenge, but the Christian community itself, I think, is rising up. But we have to keep our eye on the fact that there's 3 stages to this. So right now we're in stage 1, the crisis itself. It's the pit. okay? But then there's going to be recovery from this crisis, which is how we climb out of the pit. And that's going to have another set of challenges and another set of financial needs and resource needs. And then when we get out of that, there's going to be stage 3, which is the new normal. We are not going back to where it was pre-COVID. There are going to be differences economically, as much as the governments are trying, there are going to be failed businesses. There's going to be a need, and so we believe there's going to be an increased need for our kinds of services, and we need to be in a position to manage them. I'd just like to, I've been reminding people, Acts 17:26, Paul is talking to the Romans about the unknown God, but he talks, and he's using the word nations. But really what he's saying was that God knew that we would be alive at this time, so he created us for such a time as this. And he will equip us to be his light, his salt in this darkness at this time as we work through this virus. So we're looking at Streets Alive, we're looking at this as a wave to ride. We're declaring that we're not going to just survive this, we're going to thrive in the midst of it, and we're going to flourish on the other side of it. We serve the living God, and he created us for this, so we're full speed ahead. We're looking to the future, we want to be prepared, and we're looking for anybody that will join us and be ready to carry us through stage 1, 2, and 3, and when we're out the other side. I mean, the greatest thing that we do right now is we still bring hope to those that have none. We still bring the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ every day. And there's more and more people need to hear that message. And while in the midst of the warehouse and everything else we're doing, everything we do brings that message. So thank you for allowing me to come and share
Well,
today.
Ken, thank you so much for joining us today. It was very enlightening. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Great. Thank you again.
That was Ken Kissick, the co-founder of Streets Alive Mission.
China is battling damage control to its reputation in light of the coronavirus pandemic, the trade sanctions on Canada, and the crackdown on Hong Kong protesters. Joining me now is a professor from Edmonton who knows a thing or two about the Asian nation. Gordon Holden is the director of the China Institute at the University of Alberta. Welcome to BCN, Dr. Holden.
Thank you, Hal.
Now, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney tweeted that he was shocked to learn that China had arrested Martin Lee, founder of the Hong Kong Democratic Party, who's a personal friend of his. Chinese authorities also returned the tweet, rebuking Kenney and basically telling him to stay out of China's affairs. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it was a mistake to arrest Martin Lee. This is a legend of promotion of democracy in Hong Kong. I've known him for 25 years. I called on him last November when I was in Hong Kong. He's a remarkable gentleman. He speaks English with a British accent. He did his law studies in Britain. He battled the British for greater democracy in China and now has been battling the Chinese since 1997. They picked the wrong target, absolutely.
Now, while the world grapples with COVID-19, it seems that China has used this opportunity to arrest pro-democracy leaders in Hong Kong. Why does China fear the one country, two systems agreement?
Well, I think that there was always ambivalence in China about the one country, two systems. I think that Deng Xiaoping, when he was around, was willing to make that concession because he knew that China really badly needed Hong Kong, its financial clout, its technology, its ability to promote business within China itself. It needs Hong Kong a little bit less now, but it is especially afraid of a Hong Kong that will be too outspoken, too much willing to push the envelope, and perhaps even encourage other Chinese in the Chinese mainland to want the same advantages that Hong Kong has.
Do you believe that there's any hope for democracy to flourish in Hong Kong, or do you expect it will continue to deteriorate? In other words, what options do the people of Hong Kong really have?
Well, I think what Hong Kong still has is important. They have a considerable measure of freedom of the press, absolutely critical. Hong Kong newspapers regularly criticize China and the Chinese leadership. They have freedom of religion, freedom of gathering, and they can speak their minds. None of those things can happen on the Chinese mainland. So that still matters. However, what the activists, a lot of the people want, is a thorough democracy, the right to elect their own leadership. They have a bit of that, but not that much. And I don't think that they get much more.
What about the extradition of Huawei executive MENG? Now, if she is extradited to the United States, what do you expect China's response will be? And why is she still here after all this time?
Well, I think that the wheels of Canadian justice grind very finely but very slowly. I've worked when I was in government on an extradition request for a major criminal out of Vancouver, someone we wanted to send back to China. It took us 11 years. He had good lawyers and made appeals right to the Supreme Court. Now, I hope that this case does not last as long, but we know now already that it will not be wrapped up before the fall, and that doesn't even take into account the appeals process. The justice supervising the extradition hearing has yet to render a verdict. When that's done, the appeals process opens. Now, if the judge says no case, then Madame Meng will go back to China directly, and that will be over. And I presume the two Michaels might be freed shortly thereafter. But if she is consigned for extradition in the United States, she can have appeal process which can go up to the Supreme Court, could take a couple of years at least.
Now, still with the topic of Huawei, should Canada think twice before allowing them to participate in building our 5G network?
I think we certainly should think twice. But it's not necessarily quite an easy matter as it might look at first glance. We pay some of the highest data rates in the world, and we've got a set of companies that have equipment that's good quality, etc. Huawei's got good quality equipment that's much cheaper. So it's a real dilemma for the providers. What we do need is a decision fairly soon, because if we're not going to be one of the last countries to get 5G, they need to get started. The alternatives are Siemens, which is an Alcatel. These are options, but that takes time. Their equipment's more expensive. They need to get started. So I think a decision is overdue. If it is to include Huawei, that is the decision, if it is to include Huawei, we better be very careful to make sure that there's lots of security safeguards built into the system before we go forward.
Now, 2 Canadians are still being detained in China, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. Many believe this is in reaction to the arrest of MENG WANZHOU, the Huawei executive. If it is, why does China believe this will really work?
Well, I think there's no doubt in my mind. The timing of the arrest of these 2 individuals is such that there can be no doubt that this is a retaliatory measure taken by China. They can do things there that we can't do here. We can't simply arrest a random Chinese national because one of our Canadians have been arrested in China. We just don't work that way. Their system allows that sort of flexibility, if you wish, where they can take what we would consider extrajudicial measures to detain someone in retaliation for something else that's being done. I'm not optimistic at all that the 2 Michaels will be freed unless the Madame Meng case has been dealt with. And China will stick to its guns, in my view, will not waver. The conditions may improve. I'd like to see that immediately. She's not even under house arrest. During daylight hours, she can roam the city. She has 2 mansions. She can go shopping, meet with friends. I mean, COVID-19 make a bit of an exception, I suppose. She can live a more or less normal life, a leisure in Vancouver. Our guys are locked up in a Chinese jail. And I've been in Chinese jails, not as a prisoner, but as a consular officer visiting Canadians who've been detained. And this is no picnic. It's hard time.
Yeah, well, how would you actually compare a Chinese jail to a North American jail? What are the big differences?
I'd rather be in a Canadian jail for sure. One of the things that's also characterizes Chinese jail is they make a great effort of mental pressure on you to confess and to reform. And so there's a lot of coercion that goes into that. Plus, our guys went through good 6 months of interrogation by the Ministry of State Security. That's a particular branch that focuses on the equivalent of the FBI, I suppose you could say, or CSIS. And they were in confinement, the lights on 24/7, never alone in solitary confinement, but always with a guard sitting just outside the bars of the cell watching them. Now they're out of that now. Interrogation phase is finished, but this is tough time. You'd have to look at our maximum security jails to find something equivalent. And I think that the foodstuffs and the entertainment, none of that we may have to some degree in our jails would be found there. It's just tougher.
Now, the trade wars continue between Canada and China. China's been blocking exports of our canola and other goods for a while. It was the beef and the pork. How can a country like Canada respond in such a way that it'll actually make a difference?
Very difficult. We're 37 million people, they're 1.4 billion. We have an economy that is large, a couple trillion. They've got one which is perhaps 18 trillion, depends how you count it, closing rather steadily on the United States to be the world's largest economy. And we matter somewhat to them, but they can live without us much more easily than we can live without them as a market. We are more dependent on their market opportunities. Even though they sell more here than we sell to them, Canada is a relatively minor consideration in their calculations, in my opinion.
So, Professor Holden, do we know on average how Canadians actually view China right now?
We track that fairly carefully, and my institute, China Institute at the University of Alberta, has in the past tracked quite carefully the views of Albertans as well towards China. And on both those groups, Canadians in general, Albertans, there's been a deterioration. That began before the two Michaels and before COVID-19, neither of which improved standing. And in fact, after the detention of the two Michaels and the Chinese economic retaliation, views became already negative, but they came more so. And COVID-19 has not helped either. I haven't seen the most recent polling, but it's not pretty seen from a Chinese perspective. So it has gone down. It can't go down all that much further, quite frankly. When you have a bad rating, you can only go so much lower. And so at some point, it would begin to rise normally, but right now, it is in the doldrums, to be sure.
Do you think that China actually cares how Canada and the rest of the Western world actually view their country?
I think they do. That doesn't mean that they will then do or become what we wish they would do or we wish they were like. They do care a lot about the United States. The United States is their big rival. It's a major economic power. They care about Europe, the EU as a group, and they care about the assembly of third world nations. And we are a country. They also care about public views here. I speak to the embassy regularly. They're unhappy about the coverage they get, etc. But they don't care enough that they're going to take measures which they don't believe are in their interests.
Now, China is going to be a big election issue in the U.S. presidential race between Trump and Biden. How much of an issue do you think it'll be in the next Canadian federal election?
Very hard to know. I think that election's a fair ways off. And it's hard to know what will be the driving issues in that election. In general, as you know, well, elections in Canada very seldom turn on a foreign policy issue. I think Diefenbaker was one exception, and certainly the free trade agreement, the NAFTA agreement was an election issue. But in general, turns on economic issues, things that are closer to home. But to the degree to which there is a foreign policy issue, China will matter. The views of the government will be examined closely by the opposition, and there'll be a range of views. But I think you'll find it might not quite be as important as people think, because most are critical, and it'll be the opposition parties perhaps saying the government is too gentle on China, the government saying no, they're not, etc. It's too early to know if that'll really be an issue that bites, but the degree to which foreign policy plays, China absolutely.
U.S. President Donald Trump and others believe that China has far too much influence and control over the World Health Organization. What are your thoughts?
Well, they certainly have a great measure of influence. So does the United States, although the U.S. has now cut funding and is at odds with the WHO. Here I've got mixed views. The WHO, particularly for a smaller country like Canada, we really need their expertise and their intelligence. And by that I mean their surveillance system they run internationally, whereby viruses and diseases that are picked up in any one of the world's countries are reported to Geneva and then distributed to member countries. So maybe the U.S. could get along with the WHO. I think we'd have greater difficulty, but certainly WHO ought not to be concerned about offending China or offending the U.S. or offending Canada for that matter. I like it when these international organizations are not afraid to speak their mind and to be open and transparent, but we need them.
Many people believe that the coronavirus originated at a lab in Wuhan, China, and now, ironically, Canada is getting some of the personal protective equipment, or PPE, and other medical supplies from China. I don't know about you, but there is some irony there, isn't there?
There's a lot of irony there. I think it's unsettled yet precisely where the virus originated. I'm confident it wasn't a bioweapon or something done deliberately. Where it came from in southern China remains to be seen. I was in Beijing during SARS, working at the embassy and responsible for our response. Beijing and Hong Kong, Taipei and Toronto, those are the 4 cities that were most hard hit. But the disease we know originated in Guangzhou and Guangdong province in southern China. And I think it's too early to know. What would help would be an independent international body, including Canadians, perhaps with WHO involved, but with highly credible scientists from the world, including the United States, including Canada and others, expertise being the reason to be included, to get down there with full access and to dig around doctor to doctor, expert to expert, not to party officials, and find out the answer. I think we will know the answer eventually. It's very hard to hide these things for too long. I think it'll turn out to have been accidental. China got a lot of damage as well, not just their reputation, to their economy, shrank in the first quarter of this year for the first time since the 1970s. So I think we need answers. I wish I knew with precision. I think we will get that answer, even if it takes a while.
Professor Gordon Holden, Director of the China Institute at the University of Alberta, thanks for joining me today from Edmonton.
Thank you very much, Hal.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless. Thanks so much for watching.